Drop it like Rudy Giuliani's net worth. Welcome back, one and all, to another edition of the Young Turks on Friday. I am joined by a mixed panel. Joining us remotely, we have, once again, Mondale Robinson. Mondale, always great to have you here. Mondale is, of course, a host at Rebel HQ, as well as mayor of Enfield, North Carolina. Mondale, thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me, John.
Great to have you here. We got some fun stories for you, don't worry. But then we also have a literal person in the same vicinity as me, Ramesh Srinivasan, back once again in studio. Great to have you here, author, professor, and longtime contributor to the Young Turks as well. Thank you for being here.
And more than anything, a friend of the Young Turks.
100%.
Happy to be with you. And John, you and I have interacted in person, but I remember also talking with you from literally small villages in India in the middle 100%. Of the night.
In the middle of the night, yes. Yeah. It was far more inconvenient for you than for me, timing wise.
Yeah.
But great to have you here. I miss the days of turning and looking at a person when you're here. But it is also great that in this time we're able to expand our reach and bring in people who can't physically be here, like Mondale. So Mondale, thank you once again.
Good to meet you, Mondale.
You too, brother. And I'm so sad I can't turn and look at you guys.
Sorry, we'll get you over here eventually. And I didn't know this was the first time you're doing a show together as well. That's awesome. Well, this is our first hour panel, but we also have an exciting panel coming up in 1 hour. Cenk Uygur is going to be here and joined by Brett Ehrlich and Jordan Ewell, so definitely stay tuned for that as well. But we get to go first, which means we get first dibs on the awesome news, which is coming up in just a little bit, and it's gonna be a lot of fun. And then we have big updates on classified documents, more polls for Biden. Are they good? Are they disastrous? Stay tuned to find out. And Fox News loses their mind about Christmas, as they are contractually obligated to do. But with that said, you guys ready? You wanna jump into some news?
Yeah.
Okay, let's talk about what's been going on. Down goes Rudy to the tune of $148 million that he will owe to Georgia election workers who he defamed, starting an avalanche of lies and conspiracy theories and death threats against them that continues to this day. Now, that is a big number, admittedly, and Rudy Giuliani certainly seems to think it's excessive. Take a look.
Of course, there's very little I can say right now. I have to analyze this. Obviously, possibly we'll move for a new trial. Certainly we'll appeal. The absurdity of the number merely underscores the absurdity of the entire proceeding, where I've not been allowed to offer one single piece of evidence in defense, of which I have a lot. So I am quite confident when this case gets before a fair tribunal, it'll be reversed so quickly, it'll make your head spin.
And that perhaps will come. He certainly will appeal. We'll see if that is successful. But look, we're gonna get into the content of what he said and also reactions from those who he defamed. But I just wanna pause and get a reaction from both of you on the panel. $148 million is, on the one hand, considering that it's being levied against a guy who is as evil as he is cartoonish, something that's gonna generate a little bit of schadenfreude in me, but it is also a very large number. So I wanna start with you, Mondale. What do you make of that? Does it seem appropriate?
I think it is appropriate. I think the message is not about Rudy Giuliani. The court and also the people that were suing him don't expect to get $148 million, if anything. Like, I think the message is, though, everybody that is threatening democracy, be on alert. Be on watch. And I think that message was sent loud and clear, especially when you consider the fact that the sisters were only asking for $48 million. And when I say sister, I'm referring to our ethnicity, not their relationship with their mother and daughter. But they were asking 48 million, and the jury went above that and offered an extra 100 million. So I think this is a message about America's democracy, and I think it's a wonderful thing.
Ramesh?
It's actually it's great news, because regardless of the specifics of the number involved, right, 148 million versus 48 million, it's a rare example that we see here in this country where systems of power, systems of justice, actually in this particular case sided with those who are more marginalized, right? And so Giuliani has made a career out of exploiting working class people, people of color, flushing people out of New York City from his days as the mayor of New York, so much more, and then his alliance with Trump and so on. And so I think generally we see in this country again and again and again, those who are more marginalized end up getting the most screwed by decisions and adjudications and politics more generally. So here at least we see some comeuppance, and Giuliani looks shocked. He looks shook in this video right here.
Yeah, and look, maybe there are some people who are physically, emotionally, and psychologically constituted in a fashion that they can weather this. I think he's scoring 0 out of 3 on that. And he is worried. He will appeal. He is allowed to in our system. And while I don't know exactly what that number should be, I hear what both of you are saying, and I will say, like, you are attempting to put a number on 2 women who will never be able to have the life that they did again.
Yep.
Even with all this money, it doesn't matter that a judge has already said that the comments were defamatory. Rudy Giuliani is still largely standing by every single thing that he said. And the tens of millions of Americans that believe every one of the conspiratorial racist comments that he made will believe that until the day they die. And until Ruby Freeman and Shay Moss die, they're still going to get comments about this. Maybe years from now, it'll be a little bit rarer, a little bit more time between them, but they will not be able to apply for a job, meet a new person without being, like, that is the story of their life now, is that they were attacked by Rudy Giuliani and Donald Trump in his effort to overturn democracy.
Yeah, I mean, increasingly we live in a culture, and Mondial, I'm curious what you think also. It's like, I feel like increasingly we live in a culture where defamatory, slanderous, or libelous content, or just categorizing someone in a very negative way, even if you're just completely lying about it, that's what sticks, rather than the work to repair the image, right? Yeah. And I think part of that is amplified and accented, as we've talked about before, John, by the nature of social media, right? Which tends to take content that's defamatory and have that go viral, and actually work as a sort of kind of incarcerating space, a bordered space where people who are either reveling in the hateful tweets of Giuliani can kind of continue to revel, or the rest of us are left, being like anxious and irritated and frustrated, right? So the damning nature of what Giuliani did is deeply costly and almost impossible to put any price to.
Yeah. Any other thoughts, Mondale?
Yeah, and I think also we also have to consider the fact that the way we catch news now is not like it used to be in the olden days. Yep. So what happens is people in the Fox sphere won't even hear about this settlement other than to demonize the 2 women who were just victimized by Rudy Giuliani. So their story will be that Rudy Giuliani and Trump and anybody else that lose lawsuits for this behavior will be made into martyrs, right? So this is ad bona fides to all of the people that the system is working against, the so-called white people of America that traditionally own this space. So I think what happens is we are in a dangerous space, as you both said. But I think what's going to happen, not even in a distant future, tomorrow these women will be back on guard, being threatened or being attacked for whatever reason. We know what happens to Black victims, especially when they are successful plaintiffs in lawsuits.
100%. Yeah, they're gonna have to be vigilant online and in person for the rest of their life, even if they get a significant chunk of this money, which remains to be seen. But that said, we've been talking about the comments. So why don't we go to Rudy Giuliani being asked about whether he holds any regrets on having said what he said.
Do you have any regrets about some of the comments that the women received?
Well, of course, the comments they received I had nothing to do with. Those comments are abominable, they're deplorable. No defense to it, but I receive comments like that every day. Different kinds of things. I've represented clients who have gotten that from the other side. This is a terrible part of our political system. Republicans, Democrats, liberals, and conservatives all get that. My comments weren't that.
So yes, regrets, but no actual regrets. Nothing that he said, which he still says that everything he said was accurate, and if only he'd been able to provide evidence, he could prove it. It's been 3 years. I think that if you were gonna prove it, you would have by now. And he had nothing to do with the death threats, the threats of lynchings and rape and all of that. It doesn't have anything to do with him. If he hadn't suddenly elevated them to the national stage in that courtroom, they would have just spontaneously been the focus of right-wing conspiracy theories. He didn't have to do anything. And look at the defense there. I get comments Democrats get comments, Republicans get comments. That's our political system. Okay, maybe, and that sucks, by the way. Let's not just accept that status quo, but maybe people who willingly make themselves into national political figures, governors, lawyers for presidents and everything, get some of that and need to expect it. They were election workers. They were not running for Senate as if that would excuse it. They had no interest in their names being, like thrown around in the media and on 4chan, and they would not have been were it not for him. So even after $148 million, he still doesn't take any responsibility for what he did. Mondale, what do you think?
I mean, what are we expecting from Mr. Stop and Frisk himself, right? I mean, like this is a guy who could literally justify in front of many cameras the practice of stop and frisk, and this is no different. I mean, this is a continuation of a stubborn old white man being a stubborn old white man.
Yeah, Ramesh.
Yeah, I mean, it's whenever one is in a position of power, as you said, John, you can expect to be criticized, right? Even in this particular way with the social media environment, it could be pretty vicious. But Giuliani has been for a very long time in a position of great power and privilege and wealth, and accordingly, he's been criticized and had negative comments made about him. Never mind that all of his crimes that he's committed, at least allegedly. But he actually took these two working, like election workers, and put them in front of these ravenous mobs, right? It's like taking the meat and feeding it to the wolves, right? So that itself is it's not just a defamatory act for him to say something about them that's not true on Twitter, but also to set it up in such a way where now they are exposed and their lives are threatened in certain senses, as we've seen.
And look, we are on some level lucky, and they are lucky that thankfully they are still alive to this day, because that was no guarantee. As soon as they were the target of these insane racist conspiracy theories, there are plenty of people around the country that were not only sending them messages, threats, racist attacks, saying they should be hanged, people telling them they fantasize about hearing the sound of their necks snapping. There are people who really believe that and wish that someone would act on it. And thankfully, we've gotten to this point where thankfully that did not happen. And by the way, we haven't played his comments. We've done it 1,000 times, so I'm not going to right now. But if you think it's like, why do you guys keep bringing up race? They were explicitly racist theories. He was constantly like pretending that any motion they make of their bodies is something to do with drug dealing, heroin this and marijuana that. Had nothing to do with anything that he was saying. He chose to make it about that. And I want to remind you too that it wasn't just messages, as if that would be okay. People showed up at their home. They tried to execute a citizen's arrest of Moss at her grandmother's house. And I will remind you that they were talking about doing citizen's arrest in some recent cases. This is now a thing that they just routinely talk about on the right. They called Moss's 14-year-old son's cell phone so much that it interfered with his virtual classes, and he ended up having failing grades. So they were harassing other family members of them. And so that's what they had to endure. It is entirely likely that this judgment will result in a new round of fury at them for having to basically blaming them for the financial difficulties that Rudy Giuliani is gonna have. So yeah, I continue to be worried about them. I hope that some of this money, if they get it, goes to private security, because the dark reality is that they need it in America. They cannot simply exist.
Yeah, I mean, that was pretty much my point, is that given what's already been done to these two likely innocent people, right? What amount of money could ever undo the wrongs that were done, right? You're almost forced to live a life where you're continuously anxious or scared or concerned that something that your own life could be at risk accordingly. So, there's no amount of money, there isn't necessarily in my mind any justice for these women outside of financial remuneration to try to at least partially compensate for such. Because once you're down and dragged into the mud in this kind of situation, that's it.
Yeah, and I mean, like, as a person who is a historian, a self-proclaimed historian, that's me, on Black things, and then also a person who is an elected official that's suffering from some of the same people threatening these women, because I tore down a Confederate monument, the largest Klan chapter live extremely close to where these women reside, and they definitely make it their business to threaten them. And I think we need to remind people that the Klan rebirth happened right outside of where these women lived. We don't know where they live now, and unfortunately, that's what is going to be the case for them for the rest of life. The world will never know where they live, and it's for their safety. And that living in this life, it's enough stress being Black in America to add the fact that you are a particular Black that has offended the white system and it's coming after you is something extremely nerve-wracking. So much so that when I film, you see me on different shows across TYT, I'm always in a different space, and it's because I'm running from the loyal white knights on a regular basis. And my donors for my organization had to find security for me. So I can't even imagine what it means to have the entire MAGA and Black world, Black net after you. So this is a real thing for these people, not to mention, and I need people to understand that the largest ode to KKK, to the white supremacy, is 30 some miles away from Atlanta in Stone Mountain, Georgia. And people don't talk about it enough.
That's a great point, a great point. I guess I should probably apologize. We've been so focused on Giuliani, and I understand sort of why, but let's also stop for a second and talk about Ruby Freeman and Shaye Moss. The two women who were defamed by Rudy Giuliani have spoken out in the wake of this $148 million verdict against him, saying, and this is Ruby Freeman in this case, saying, "Today is a good day. A jury stood witness to what Rudy Giuliani did to me and my daughter and held him accountable, and for that I'm thankful. Giuliani was not the only one who spread lies about us, and others must be held accountable too," announcing there that, first of all, this case is not done. It's going to be appealed, but they intend to seek justice against the others who spread lies against them. Moss said the flame that Giuliani lit with those lies and passed to so many others to keep that flame blazing changed every aspect of our lives, adding that it's been devastating for her and her mother and that they are still working to rebuild. She said she hopes no one else will ever have to experience what they went through. And Freeman underscored that despite the major financial numbers that we're seeing right here, that money will never solve all of my problems. I can never move back into the house that I called home. I will always have to be careful about where I go and who I choose to share my name with. I miss my home, I miss my neighbors, and I miss my name. And like the exact sort of sociopaths who in the media, the right-wing media, were spreading the lies about her, I'm sure they can't even understand that. Because everything they do, the insane things that they say, the harm they're willing to push onto people is in pursuit of money. That's at the end of the day all that matters to these people. They're soulless. But there are real people out there who just wanted to volunteer to help elections happen. And now that has been taken away from them. Virtually every touchstone of their life has been irreparably harmed. So I understand. And they're gonna have a fight, not just once they move on to other people who'd lied, but even to get this money from Rudy Giuliani. We know that he's wealthy. We don't know how wealthy. He refused in these cases to actually provide financial details about his life. It's actually one of the reasons that the judge initially ruled that he was using defamatory language. We know that he's being sued for $1.3 million by his former lawyer. We know that he is trying to sell a New York apartment for $6.5 million. We know that he was paid $350,000 by a political action committee affiliated with Donald Trump, and there was recently a $100,000 a head fundraiser for Giuliani that Trump actually led, which is more action by Trump than I would have expected to help out Rudy Giuliani. So a little bit more loyalty than I have come to expect from Trump, but also the fact that there are people who will dish out $100,000 a head to help out what is left of Rudy Giuliani is a reminder that taxes are not nearly high enough in this country. So anyway, the fight will continue. They're happy, celebratory a little bit, but a sort of measured response. Mondale, what do you make of what these women said?
Well, I mean, I think it's to me the most important part, or the part that hit the most, is when you hear someone who is first or second generation homeowner ever in her family not being able to go back to the house that she spent 20 years in because of Rudy Giuliani is absolutely disgusting to me, right? So I think that hit me the most. I wanted to say something about what you said, John, because you were spot on about whether he's wealthy or not. whether he's wealthy or not, the harm that he's done can't be paid for. You can't pay for the fact that you built something. You spent 20 years somewhere and you didn't move because you wanted to, or because you decided to upsell or downsize your life. You moved because your life was being threatened. And I don't know how you explain that to people and make them hear it.
Yeah. Yeah. Any final thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think the final thought I have is maybe more idealistic in a sense, which is, I just wonder how, I mean, in the case of Giuliani, I think we know what the reality is, but I wonder if all of us can just sort of take stock of how easy it is to share opinions about others that could actually harm them. You know, it's really easy to harm others, even when we don't even realize that we're doing so. And I think that it's so easy to post or blast something out that's defamatory or hateful these days, because we have all these, you know, digital networks like right on in our pockets, right? But think about the actual harm, and is there a way to make, you know, I really wish for our country and our digital world to be more compassionate and more caring of others. So I'll end with that idealism there.
I think it's a great thing to think about. Yeah. I'm not worried about that. I just do straight news. I never inject my opinion. But for others, I do think, I'm kidding, that is a good thing to bear in mind. And look, the internet held so much promise at one point, and then it turned out that, oh, it's humans that are going to be using it. That's an issue. Yeah, I wish it could be more compassionate, more positive, more educational, more productive. And
knowing fully well, John and Mondale, that these digital systems, these private corporations that run these technology corporations monetize hate and outrage because it's more eyeballs and it's more data.
Yeah. Great point.
And that's a fact. I was just gonna say that. Just remember, I remember when Twitter was just us nerds. It was a beautiful space, and there were no blue checks. It was just nerds, and it was wonderful. Also, I would say that, can you believe this guy we're talking about was Times Man of the Year?
It's crazy.
Wow.
Yeah, but he might still make ooze of the decade. We'll have to see. But anyway, yes, everyone, try to be a little bit more compassionate as you go about your lives. You can start in our chat rooms, by the way, on Twitch and YouTube. We do have to take our first break though. When we come back, updates on the classified documents case. I thought we knew everything we needed to know about that. Turns out there was a bombshell waiting to be revealed, and we'll discuss it after this. Okay, everybody, let's see what you've gotten up to. I'm expecting only kind, compassionate comments. Don't disappoint me. Let's see. Textan says someone should convert $148 million into bottles of gin to put it into context for Rudy. See, that's mocking. That's not compassionate, but it is funny though. Let's see. Art Guy, hey Art Guy, how's it going? Says finally one of these Trumpist goons gets some real justice. I hope Donnie is next. We'll see. I mean, he's got a gag order. He's not, like, for all the defaming that he's done, he's never been on the hook for it. Let's see. Gab, he says, unfortunately, all of Giuliani's money is tied up in store brand vodka futures. Jesus. I try to remember that he mostly deserves it. Okay, Raya Heap says maybe he and Alex Jones can have a pity party over their big mouths. By the way, I would have doubled, triple the money. Yeah, I wanted to talk a little bit about Alex Jones there too, because it's good that we can occasionally have a ruling like this where it's like, hey, justice, but then you remember he hasn't paid out anything yet, and he might never, and he's still rich. He gets to go on being rich for the insane defamatory comments that he's made. It is an incredibly imperfect system.
In relation to kids who lost their lives and their parents.
Yeah.
I mean, just mass murder. Right?
Cannot imagine. Casper the Friendly Dragon, hey Casper, says, first time getting to wear my Dragon Squad shirt. Also, Deja Thoris and Willow say yay for TYT and TDR with some photos of adorable looking huskies. Thank you for that and for the picture. Okay, let's see. Oriah says, do these two heroes have a GoFundMe page? If they do, you may drop some money, bucks towards their survival. That I don't know, but a perfectly good thing to look for. Let's see, Happy Warrior Dragon gifted a sub over on Twitch. Thank you so much for that. I want to remind you, by the way, that if you have Amazon Prime, you have a free subscription every month that you can use, and one way to use that is by going to tyt.com/prime to effectively support TYT, except monetarily, it's Jeff Bezos that's doing it. How nice is that? It's like double support. Okay, let's see. Pickled Baby Beats says, love, love, love Johnny Pie, Mayor Robinson, but Ramesh is possibly my favorite TYT guest host. I get so happy every time he is on. Oh. Boom. Very nice comment. See, that's positive and kind. Lucius.
Well, not to me, you, John.
Well, no, they said that they love us. We're not the favorite, but we're triple loved. Okay, someone who does have us as your favorite, write in and I'll read it. In fact, you'll go to the front of the line. Okay, Lucius says, and chat is great. They've been here for 10 months, by the way, on Twitch. And chat is great to be part of this community. Keep the good fight up. Pura Vida from Costa Rica, thank you, very nice of you. Danielle became a member, thank you. Susanna Walker Clark became a member as well. And then Benjamin Morrill gifted a membership. BH gifted 5 of them. That's the kind of compassionate, evolved internet we're aiming for, thank you. Welcome back, one and all. I'm John. We're on with Mondale and Ramesh, and we've got more news. Take a look at this.
New exclusive CNN reporting about highly classified intelligence that went missing at the end of the Trump administration. The intelligence was related to Russian election interference in the United States. It was so secret, it was kept inside a safe within another safe at CIA headquarters. But in the final weeks of the Trump administration, a copy of that intelligence was put inside a binder brought to the White House as part of an effort to declassify documents related to the FBI's Russia probe. And from there, the trail goes cold.
Yeah, there were more documents, and of all of the things the documents could address, Russian interference in the 2016 election is the content of the documents, the binder, the massive 10-inch thick binder, by the way. It just happened to go missing. It's so weird. And so on theme, by the way, for the way that it was supposed to be securely stored, that they had a safe inside of a safe, sort of like a Russian nesting doll sort of security strategy there, but that's gone. We don't know where that is. There are some theories, and we're gonna get into the evidence, but we have a little bit more first.
So this binder that was brought to the White House contained raw intelligence that the US and its NATO allies collected on Russia's efforts to meddle in the 2016 election, including sources and methods, which are some of the most sensitive information in the intelligence world. So what we're talking about here is the underlying intelligence that formed the basis of the US government's assessment that Russian President Vladimir Putin sought to help Trump win the 2016 election.
So there is some information for you. We have a little bit more, okay? So to the best of everyone's collective ability, it has been able to be tracked to the last known whereabouts of this 10-inch thick binder again, the last days of the Trump administration, and supposedly former Chief of Staff Mark Meadows was reported to have made a mad dash minutes before Joe Biden was sworn in an attempt to declassify documents which could have included that particular binder, that's what they're saying. He apparently rushed to the DOJ to hand deliver a redacted copy for one last review. Years later, the Justice Department has yet to release all the documents, despite Trump's declassification order. Additional copies with varying levels of redaction ended up at the National Archives. He apparently, by the way, Meadows, had made copies of the binder for some conservative politicians and journalists. And CNN notes that the copies initially sent out were frantically retrieved at the direction of White House lawyers demanding additional redactions. So there are a couple of potential reasons that they might want to do last minute redactions after giving these documents to conservative politicians and journalists. It could be that they're like trying to protect, it's about Russian efforts to meddle in the election. It's not like they're trying to redact a conclusion that they didn't, that nothing untoward was done and Trump comes out of it looking like a really cool, innocent guy. They obviously gave this to journalists because they thought there was something that the journalists could use that would be harmful for Hillary Clinton, Comey, I don't know. And then they realized after giving it out that there was something that they didn't want friendly politicians and journalists to know about. And then eventually, it's just gone. It was not among the documents that were recovered from Mar-a-Lago. No word yet on whether it's in his former ex-wife's coffin, along possibly with other documents. There's a lot of concern about it possibly having been flown somewhere. There's a few other theories too, but I've thrown a lot out there. Ramesh, I want to start with you. What do you make of this?
I mean, sure, it's another example of how casually, not just the former president, but in general, these sorts of secrets that are supposed to be so, ironclad, can just get out or just disappear, right? And I think it's actually interesting to think about that in relation to the physical binders of secrets, those being lost, because I think a pretty clear assumption that many of us know these days is almost anything digital or datafied at some point, I can't say almost anything, but very often these things get leaked or dumped out, right? So the other thing that I note is if such information is actually really important, would that not be critically important in terms of trying to protect, whatever level of integrity we can with the forthcoming election? We know that the Russians interfered in our election. We also know that that's a very common thing. That's not sort of a unique thing, that countries interfere in one another's elections. Sometimes in our case, that might mean our military, like just invading and killing people. You know what I mean? That's our version of it, right? So given that, and given so much anxiety associated with Putin, who just said he's gonna stay on till at least 2030, right? And what's likely to come, where the media is gonna try to figure out a way to critique Trump. With this binder going missing, I mean, that's a potentially serious issue. It's a potentially very serious issue. And I guess it gets to the larger point about the larger inequalities that we have as human beings. This is a little bit tied to this, right? So as citizens of this country, we are only barely aware of how often we are being surveilled, not just by private corporations, but by the state, right? The state and corporations, private corporations are best buddies in this country because of the corruption of the political system, right? But it's so interesting how rarely we actually learn about those who spy on us, right? Yeah, we know we are spied on, but we are never able to watch the watchers, right? So in this particular case, the watcher might be the Russian state, which could actually be important in trying to protect whatever we can out of this election, so it's at least supportive of us US citizens, though that itself is a nauseating thing to even begin to think about.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. Mondale, thoughts?
Here's what's baffling to me. How in the hell are we just hearing about this? I'm confused that we're just hearing about this, mainly because if we don't know what this document is, this 10-inch thick document is, binder, and it was raw intelligence, that means any source that had anything to do with it should be pulled out of the field. All of those agents should be decommissioned for their safety. And just because we don't know who has this document and who they've shared it with, if I was an agent for the United States or any of our allies, and my name was in that document, I would be on fire right now. On fire. Like, this is Scooter Libby level crazy to me. The fact that we're talking about human capitals, not just the way that we retrieved it, the people who were able to put this document together, the sources, their contacts, all of those people are in jeopardy. And I'm just a little nervous about the fact that Senate leadership knew about this for so long, people in the CIA knew about this for so long, and America, citizens like us are just hearing about this. Seriously, this is dangerous.
Yeah, it's just a great example of how little is actually disclosed to us as US citizens about these sort of apparatuses of surveillance, right? And the other thing I would and so like how like we are supposed to be the ones in power in this country, but we know so little about what is being done to us, even in a sort of governmental sense, even in terms of our own state government, our own national government surveilling us all. But then the other thing just to remember is in case any of this information includes Russians who had corroborated or collaborated with these so-called intelligence agencies, they're all in big trouble.
That's true.
Because we know what the Russian government and Putin does to anyone who gets in his way.
Yeah.
They're in big trouble with big graves. They may be already dead because if the documents were retrieved, sent back to Russia or leaked to anybody in their circle, they've already been wiped out. Them and likely a lot of other people. So it's extremely baffling.
100%. I mean, there's a lot, I think, that, and I'll close with one other thing that's sort of baffling to me. Like Cassidy Hutchinson, former aide under the Trump administration, said that she's almost certain that Mr. Meadows had it, and she was the one who wrote in her book Enough that he had been like in the last minutes of the Trump administration before Biden was sworn in, running around with a binder under one arm like a football, telling journalist John Solomon, "How fast can you get me to the Department of Justice? They can use lights and sirens, sir. You should make it there before noon, even with the road closed." This is like, I have to get this out of the city. He said at one point, "Good, let's do it. I am not gonna be the chief of staff who doesn't get this binder declassified." So hold on, remember, and just think about this. So first of all, I am also mad that they didn't tell us about this. This whole time we've been worried about what could have been in the documents that were stolen. It would have been helpful to know that there was stuff that's directly tied to one of the shadiest areas of the Trump administration in its first term. But like they've been saying ever since, you don't know if we declassified this stuff. All I have to do is wrinkle my nose. We could have declassified, but we know that they didn't go through the process, except apparently at the last minute for this one thing, as if they were thinking until the last minute, well, surely Biden's not actually getting into office. Oh, damn, he's going to. This is the most important document in the government. What the hell is in that thing? Any final quick thoughts before we move on?
No, I mean, I just think that, like, I'll just kind of dial back and look at this from above, right? This election is coming up now. I know you all are going to be constantly covering this, and we're going to be talking about this even more today. But I really, really, really hope we can put some power and specificity to try to ensure that this election is as fair and is of as much integrity as possible. So like, all right, we have like a little air to breathe and a little time before things really get rolling and drummed up. Of course, the caucuses and all this are coming soon. But are there ways we progressives, or let's just say American citizens, can try to come together and insist on a set of rules and protocols that ensure some level of integrity? Because I just think that right now we're just surrounded by anxiety and a sense of alienation. Like I think a lot of people are just not going to roll out and vote for this election.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of that. Mondale, final thoughts? Oh, Mondale, I believe you might have muted yourself.
No, I'm not muted. Can you not hear me?
Yes, we can now.
Okay, cool beans. So yeah, I think for me, here's what's dastardly to me. I don't think people care. I mean, we see a large swath of Americans' population actually still going along with the big lie. I don't think that they care. People are no longer bothered by Putin. Putin is not an enemy because Trump said so. Putin has become cool as Trump in some circles, and that is the scary part. We found out that the Constitution is not, loving the Constitution is not what make you patriotic in 2024 election cycle, right? What makes you patriotic is if you support Donald Trump and whatever he wants to do, including being a dictator on day one. So I think we are already past the point where we can put up guardrails to stop this. As I'm glad you said as much as possible, because as much as possible means that Donald Trump can't take us out of NATO if he is to win, because we just saw that be presented. But I think right now, as it pertains to our election, people don't even care about election integrity or democracy anymore. Not everybody. I don't want to be that cynical, but there's a large swath of people, and we have to know that because they see Trump after Trump losing from Republican judges that he appointed. And then they just turn their back on those people. Any institution in this country that does not stand up for Donald Trump's big lie becomes anti-American, anti-patriotic, which means the only thing left is if you are American, if you are patriotic, you must support Donald Trump. And that's it.
100%. Yeah. Okay, we're gonna leave you with that thought, everyone. We're gonna take a quick break. When we come back, lots more to get to. Don't go anywhere. Welcome, one and all. Okay, so we had asked you to provide a little bit of balance. There was all this gushing towards Ramesh. Well, Uralino says, Mondale is so smoking hot, I wonder if it bothers Cenk. Why would it bother Cenk specifically? And immediately after that, the next comment was, Roses in August says he looks so hot tonight. Now those are both very nice comments about Mondale, but we asked you to say nice things about both of us, and I'm now the odd man out. Thanks a lot, America. But anyway, very nice comments about Mondale there. Okay, Jay Hawker over on Twitch has been here for 31 months. Thank you. Says 31 months watching the best news this 82-year-old has seen. It's very nice of you. Thank you for that. Okay, let's see. Mojo Quid says Putin already has the binder full of Russian intel. He invaded Ukraine in a temper tantrum over finding out what the US knew when he thought he had secrets. It's an interesting theory, but obviously we can't prove that yet. Do you think are they going to search Meadows? I mean, they would have if they were going to, right? They would have already searched his house for this.
I think by now they would have.
Yeah, it's so weird what you can get away with as long as you're wealthy and well connected. Okay, Banjo Dragons Burning Legion says this is one of my favorite power panels ever. Damn, we've had thousands. That's really nice of you. Okay, let's see. Cenk's left tricep of fury says this ruling is a great message sent that the cruelty of the Trump administration and staff will finally be addressed. I think talking about Rudy Giuliani there. Agreed. We'll see. Opinionated says sad that these women will never see any of these funds. Rudy will always owe more to his lawyers than he'll ever be capable of paying, let alone to the victims here. I don't know. It's going to come down to lawyers. I hope that they have really crafty lawyers who are able to force him to pay. Okay, let's see. Pee-wee's Mr. Mondo had a similar thought as I did, saying Russian interference docs missing during last moments of Trump's term. Check Ivana's grave on the golf course. Send Geraldo. Anyway, Eclectic says when he left the White House, Trump had to take Russian intelligence. He doesn't have any of his own. Well, so far, it looks much more like it was Meadows. That's what Cassie Hutchinson had said. And honestly, I don't know for sure exactly what a 10-inch thick binder weighs, but I'm fairly certain that Donald Trump couldn't have even lifted it, let alone sequestered it in his bathroom. Let's see, okay, this document is long. Okay, Speedy Steve, member for 38 months, says it's so sad that Rudy could have just faded into history as America's most popular mayor ever. Instead, this is his legacy. Yeah, he could have. Look, people wouldn't be talking about him publicly as much, but he'd be welcome to family Thanksgivings. I think that's a perfectly fine trade-off. Anyway, Kyle Cushing, member for 11 months, says Rudy hid his financials from Discovery. I believe the jury was instructed they could make an adverse judgment that he did so to hide his money. Sorry, I sort of messed up, but that's what I was referring to prior. But and Icky, member for 13 months, says thanks for everything. I learned so much with you guys. Well, hopefully we'll continue to learn, but we'll see on the other side of this. Welcome back to what remains of the first hour of the Power Panel. We've got more. Let's jump into it.
The polls that show the American people and also significant majorities within the Democratic Party don't want him to run again. And the polls that show his handling of the economy, foreign policy, all of these dismal polls, his job approval ratings, does the White House have any basis to challenge the accuracy of that polling?
I'm not challenging the accuracy here. That's not what I'm doing. What I'm saying to you is that, we're not going to change the minds of Americans. I get that. Americans are going to feel how they feel.
You should, though. You should really try to change the minds of the Americans because the polls look really bad. I'm not telling you how to run for office, but generally you want people to not hate you. Anyway, the polls that Karine Jean-Pierre is being asked about right there are bad. And to be clear, they're not challenging the accuracy of them. But let's see, recent Bloomberg News Morning Consult poll head-to-head, Biden versus Trump, which is still what it's looking like most likely the outcome to be. Trump is up by 4 points in Arizona, 6 points in Georgia, 4 points in Michigan, 3 points in Nevada, 9 points in North Carolina, 2 points in Pennsylvania, 4 points in Wisconsin. There is a margin of error, but at a certain point, the pattern becomes fairly clear. So I would say get on changing people's minds because this is not tenable. Not if you care as much about the future of American democracy as you're telling us you do. Mondale, I want to start with you. What do you make of the current state? We're still 11 months out from the election. Admittedly, a lot can change. You could be a jailbird by then, but what do you make of this?
I'm not implying that anybody's in violation of the Hatch Act. I am saying that what we just saw from the press secretary is the exact problem that the Biden campaign has. The fact that you're going to say that we can't change America's mind is the wrong thing to say. The correct thing to say is we're not the first incumbent president to be down a year out from election in the polls. Right? Like if Obama would have dropped out a year out before the election because he was down in the polls, then he wouldn't have had a second term. That's the correct thing to say. The idea that you're not trying to change people's mind is exactly how you're going to make these polls come to fruition next November. I am absolutely disgusted with that response, but it's par for the course when you have, I'm not applauding too much of the Biden's presidency. It's been milquetoast as it was expected to be, but there has been some serious legislation passed that they could be bragging about. The idea that she didn't talk about when he said something about the abysmal market, they should have bragged about the stock market. But I'm not here to tell the Biden campaign how to run. I would love for them to drop out if they need to. I could give them some pointers on some things he could do other than be president. The problem though is this is the problem. Not just the poll itself. I don't care too much about polls because they're polling the people that they want to, i.e. likely voters. They're not talking to a majority of certain segments, which means people who are registered but not likely to participate. And then we've seen that demographic actually change the outcome of elections for the past 2 presidential elections, and people aren't talking about that. So I am worried though that we have a presidential campaign that is being ran by people who think that it's not their job to change the mind of folk that need to vote for them.
Yeah. I mean, John and Mondale, the reality here is we see in the press secretary who has a background, leading an organization that was a sort of a democratic bastion of support in Move On, a later version of Move On than the one that drew me in when we were all protesting the Iraq War and so on, the progressive version. But the later version, Karine Jean-Pierre was, one of the leads of. And for her in her role as press secretary to basically say, we know better than you. Like we know better than all of you voters what it's going to take for the president to be reelected. I feel like that's the messaging we are hearing again and again and again. Like, oh yeah, that's what it is. But don't worry, we're fine. We're totally fine as is. And I appreciate your point, Mondale, that the polls are what they are. But at the same time, we have never seen in history since Jimmy Carter a president more unpopular at this point, this close to the election, with essentially a corrupted Democratic party that refuses to endorse open debate or any other alternatives, right? Yeah. So they're doubling down on the nature of the problem, in my opinion. And this gets to the much larger point that I've been chomping at the bit to talk with you all about when it comes to President Biden, is we just don't know what his vision is. Like, what's his vision for America moving forward? Restore the soul? Well, that kind of worked because of how awful and traumatizing the years with Trump was, and how clearly poorly run that administration was, let alone all the fascism and all of this. So restore the soul isn't, we don't even know what that means. Restore the soul so that we can, fund and support a genocide in Gaza. I mean, that's one type of soul restoration. That's not very soulful in my opinion. So, I mean, what's his vision? We see younger voters being totally turned off, which might mean they don't vote, right? I mean, per your point, Mondale. We see Muslim voters in states like Georgia and Michigan, swing states with significant amount of Muslim American populations, being totally angry and feeling like this president is not there for them. And of course, we see progressives also. So there's a lot more energy on the Republican side. That's why the polls are what they are. And so this president, who hasn't done really active press conferences, or really active, when I mean like actually sort of edgy, energetic interviews or press conferences, he's being placed in formaldehyde in the background. That's not gonna work. It's just not gonna work, and it's clear, and the writing's on the wall, and it's eminently clear. I mean, it's like, I even read a story with Cornel West, involving Cornel West on Politico yesterday, saying that Cornel West even thinks, he's polling about 5% nationally, that Biden won't even end up being, will drop out at some point. So like, this is not good. The Democratic Party needs to, grow a couple and make and sort of decide what its strategy is going to be to actually get all of us. Most Americans are very unhappy with the status quo when it comes to this president, despite a couple good things domestically, terrible things in terms of foreign policy and mostly, but they need to be building energy around their campaign and their movement. And this it just doesn't seem like this is the candidate for these times. I mean, if nothing else, because of age, let alone some quite despicable, in my opinion, policies based on my own biased way of looking at things.
Yeah, look, at this point, I don't think any of us expects Joe Biden to necessarily be the greatest avatar of the message, but for Karine Jean-Pierre, it's literally her job, is to successfully spin what is coming at you. What's coming at you right now is polls that don't look great. I feel like almost anything she could have said would have been better than what she did. And look, Joe Biden feels like he's sort of surrendering to some extent, and we cannot be that surprised that the Democratic Party, the organized leadership of the Democratic Party, is just like, whatever, I guess he's the incumbent. But it's so weird that they're getting this assist from the media, who collectively are all just pretending that there's no primary. Either primaries are illegal or they should be invisible. I mean, CNN every day is doing a town hall with the gaggle of weirdos on the right that's running. They gave Vivek Ramaswamy a national platform to just make completely unfounded accusations about FBI false flags. And they did that. And they did Ron DeSantis the day before. They're gonna do Chris Christie. You can't have the Democratic contenders for the primary on. It's almost the exact same situation, by the way, because Donald Trump is not debating. So they are stepping into the void and providing town halls. Well, on the other side, you can do that. You can give Dean Phillips is a sitting politician. You can't give him a town hall. Marianne Williamson, there are other candidates obviously as well, but you could easily do that. They've got the time. It's a 24-hour-a-day news network, but they're giving an assist to Joe Biden and pretending that he doesn't have to run.
And despite all of that,
yeah, and I think
the just sort of like the pretending like these other candidates don't even exist. Both Marianne Williamson and Dean Phillips are polling higher than Vivek Ramaswamy in national polls, and that speaks to how most of us are just not happy with the president. So they're doing their best to pretend like there aren't any other candidates that even exist, even though despite that job, they're more popular than Vivek Ramaswamy, thankfully.
Yeah, I think. For me, I don't know if they're doing Biden a service. They think they may be doing him a service by curbing the other the people on the Democratic side in the primary, even though the Democratic Party is not willing to have a primary process. But they're not really, though. If you think about it, we saw CNN and other major news network in 2015, 2016 make Donald Trump. And what I mean by make Donald Trump is Donald Trump had over $1 billion worth of free media, right? He didn't have to spend any of his budget on commercials because anything he did was covered from beginning to end, even before he was on stage. When he was warming up the come-up, he kept people coming. The camera was on Donald Trump events the entire time. So right now, that is being split between Donald Trump trials and the rest of the Republicans. So I don't know if they're doing Joe Biden a comfortable one by not covering the other candidates. I think what happens is, in the Democratic Party may learn this the hard way, that red wave that didn't happen in 2022 may be the tsunami in 2024, especially if we know that if what we're seeing in these polls in these so-called battleground states hold true. And I also want to say that, there's no service for candidates when they're not in the media. And this campaign has not even started to do anything. We've seen a few ads from Joe Biden's campaign, but the Republicans are already deep into campaign season. We've seen 4 or 5 debates and Donald Trump doing whatever he's doing. Now there are town halls on CNN. So people are being fed Republican talking points over and over, and they're popping up in spaces where they shouldn't even exist. And there's no counter to it except for, we know we're not going to change your heart.
Yeah. I mean, I wonder, John and Mondale, if there is some internal polling that these sort of establishment advisors to President Biden are doing, or I just don't know what their strategy is to actually win this election. I mean, I'm just saying that, say I was just like Karine, who I've actually been on MSNBC with, and is a very, very smart at framing things in ways that sort of seem pleasing, right? And so to actually to see them, I don't know what their strategy is, because every time I've seen an interview with a senior advisor to Biden, or even some of the acolytes to Biden, like on CNN and MSNBC and so on, all I hear them saying is it's a long way till the election. Well, Biden will be 11 months older when the election occurs, and that's a real issue amongst many others. And so, and the other point, about media and free media that Trump got is, it's the same thing as social media. It's all about what will grab eyeballs. So someone who's insane, who says a lot of lies and is angry and is good at riling people up and is a good kind of, front man, like Trump is an expert at that, will get eyeballs. I mean, it's something that we as human beings, we like that edge. We like that controversy. We might like and hate it at the same time, but we often like things that are not good for us, right? I mean, I could just go to the 7-Eleven and just around the corner and get a bunch of hot dogs and candy, and then I'll feel terrible afterward, but I'll like it while I'm eating.
Yeah, let's do that after the show, actually.
Should we do it, man?
Yeah, no, I agree. And it's just, at this point, it is really weird to be going through what is ostensibly in a democracy supposed to be an open primary process. And the only debates we'll have had is TYT hosted the candidates for a forum, and Gavin Newsom debated Ron DeSantis, so that's good. Isn't that weird? That the guy who's not running gets to do a debate, and only then because Sean Hannity sets it up. Super weird, not nearly enough questions being asked about that. Okay, we have very little time, but we do have a tiny little story, a bit of a palate cleanser for the hour that we've had. So why don't we get ready for this? You're about to watch a video, and in this video, you might have the first gut reaction that, oh, this is just a delightful holiday tap routine at the White House. But there's something far deeper and sinister lurking behind this. At least that's what the right wing is saying. And we'll get to their arguments, but first, take a look. That's it, by the way. That's what the video is like. It's a tap group, and they're doing a sort of Nutcracker style tap thing as part of the White House holiday. But obviously that's not enough. Every day there has to be a new font for conspiracism, and that video is serving for that today. So let's see, we've got following Jill Biden posting that on Twitter, people saying they're like doing still frames from that routine and finding things like this. If you look at this first tweet from Brick Suit, nice Illuminati style advent calendar you have there. Because you don't understand, dear viewer, every triangle is now sent to you by the Illuminati. Let's see, Representative Mike Collins, this sitting congressman, says, I thought we banned torture, because it is torture to have seen those people tap dancing. Ashley St. Clair of the Babylon Bee says, the White House posted this, our White House is indistinguishable from the Hunger Games capital. By the way, she and her organization had no problem whatsoever with a literal billionaire sitting in there, and Melania Trump filling the White House with blood red trees. Again, I want to jump to this though, because I love this. Benny Johnson tweeted, "This is what hell looks like." And I believe him. I believe that when he conceives of hell, it's being surrounded by happy, talented black people dancing. Like seriously, they are so telling on themselves. You don't have to like it. You don't have to like everything. Some people don't like garland. Some people think you should hang strings of popcorn from the tree. People have different sorts of holidays that they want, but the need to turn it into this life and death struggle, everything that occurs is one of the most bizarre aspects of our political culture. Mondale, what do you make of this?
I mean, listen, the people that are complaining about this are okay with Boebert grabbing someone's penis in a movie theater. So whatever.
Ramesh.
That's kind of all really we need to say about that. I mean, it's crazy how black folk doing tap dancing in the White House, in a White House that in my mind has not sufficiently empowered the cause of black peoples, but fair enough, is called, oh my God, it's diversity, equity, inclusion, according to like Ben Shapiro, who just can't get over himself. I don't know what his deal is, or called radical by others, which is sort of like people don't realize, maybe they don't even remember, like Sammy Davis Jr., like the great tap dancer, that these things come out of cultures and traditions. And by the way, that video was actually pretty, it grabbed my attention and kind of got me going. And the more that the White House can do stuff like that, rather than leaving Biden like kind of, in the closet, I don't mean that in a literal sense, but just kind of wrapping him up so he doesn't go in the public, I think the better.
Yeah. By the way, I love that like, if there's one thing, one slight against the holiday, then it's a war on Christmas. But like jumping into it whole hog, well now you're satanic, clearly. Anyway, I wanna go to just one other tweet. This is from Libs of TikTok that says, they're doing a comparison. Christmas under the Biden circus versus Christmas under Trump. Let's go to the next one. You'll see the tap dancing versus Melania standing amongst. You'll notice, by the way, that Chaya Raichik chose not to use the blood red forest, interestingly. And it is interesting though to say, look, now it's a circus. Whereas before you had Melania, and Melania had proper respect and admiration for the holiday. And yet you might know where we're going with this. Do you remember when Melania talked about decorating the White House?
Yeah.
They say I'm complicit. I'm the same like him. I support him. I don't say enough. I don't do enough.
No,
where I am, I'm working like my ass.
I know.
Christmas stuff that, who gives a about Christmas stuff and decoration, but I need to do it, right?
Maybe could have noted that when talking about who properly respects the holiday. But anyway, any final thoughts, either of you, before we close?
The way I feel about Donald Trump's Christmas decoration when he was in the White House is just like the jacket his wife wore to the border. I don't care.
I mean, my only 2 cents is happy holidays to everybody, whatever you practice or don't practice. And here's just an opportunity for us to kind of lean into our better selves and try to treat others with tolerance and compassion and love.
Look at you putting positivity out into the internet, practicing what you earlier preached.
It's my old Venice Beach hippie days.
There you go. Well, it's been great doing the first hour with Ramesh, with you, Mondale as well. Thank you so much. We're a little bit over. There's a whole nother hour to come. Brett's gonna be here, Jordan and Cenk Uygur, so don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Welcome to the Damage Report. I'm John Idarola. This is gonna be a big one.
Meanwhile, in the Arctic, you know where this is going. You watch the Damage Report, the Arctic's on fire. Obviously, why would we be talking about the Arctic except to tell you that it's melting once again? The Republicans aren't that interested in it. I wonder why. Lift out of poverty up to 3.7 million people, including an estimated 1.3 million children. Hashtag save the children? Not if it costs money. I mean, come on.
At TYT, our mission is to boldly pursue truth, challenge the establishment, and drive positive change. At a time when corporate capture of our media, our government, and our politics is nearly absolute, everyday working people need a champion to fight for them and to push back against the powerful interests that threaten our democracy itself. At TYT, we're proudly progressive and call out corruption and duplicity wherever we see it, from Republicans, Democrats, or anyone else. And unlike mainstream news media outlets, we're not beholden to corporate advertisers, to defense contractors, to Wall Street, or to Big Pharma. We only have to answer to our audience, and for nearly 2 decades, we've accomplished that by delivering honest, timely, and insightful perspectives on the day's news without fear or favor or concern for whose toes we might step on or which powerful elites we might offend. And while we're super serious about the news, we also manage to do it in a way that is fun and lighthearted. We can do this together and serve our audience, and yes, have fun doing it.
Indisputable is still the fastest growing news show in America compared to CNN, Fox News, and 30 other networks. We tell the truth on Indisputable because the truth is indisputable. We go places that other news media outlets refuse to go. When there were human rights abuses happening at the Victorville prison, guards and members of the community contacted us.
You, through your investigative reporting, unearthed very troubling allegations about specific forms of abuse and discrimination in the federal prison system.
It really doesn't take much to be a trusted voice. All it takes is to be fearless, report on matters, be an advocate. I called it the bullpen intentionally because it's a place of preparation. We present individuals who may have an opposing view, so we debate. Sometimes we interview individuals because their stories deserve to be heard. A survivor of significant police misconduct and his attorney. We covered this story earlier, and to remind you of the horror of one man being shot at damn near 100 times by the police. We take time on this show to showcase the temper tantrums of Karens in the wild. We do this not because we want to see people's emotional outbursts in public, but because these incidents are emblematic of a bigger societal issue taking place across the nation, and it has to be checked.
My friend, my big homie, attorney at law, Benjamin Crump.
I just want to thank you, man. When educated, articulate brothers like yourself speak truth to power, it makes a great difference in changing the landscape in America.
Listen, no matter what you do, don't allow the politics of ideology to evaporate the soul that still exists inside of you. They don't stop, I don't stop. Racism won't stop, I won't stop. Systemic bias won't stop, I won't stop. People still need health care, so I won't stop. People still need criminal justice systems reform, so I won't stop. You won't stop either.
Power panel all in-house. Look at this. It's fun for everybody. Cenk Uygur, Brett Ehrlich, Jordan, you'll be all right. And we've got new member Mary Annalise Iguana, the Fourth Wall Dragon, and we've got Beach Babe 21 gifting 20 Young Turks memberships. Jesus Lord mercy. Okay, you guys are kind of awesome. We have a lot of stories for you guys. As usual, you know how it goes, ranging from disastrous to fun. hence the news.
I do want to say one thing. I want to thank you for turning Jordan's name into the rest of a sentence. Whenever someone turns my name into the rest of a sentence, it's very disgusting.
Don't do it.
Ehrlich, and then it just gets horrible after that. So thank you, Cenk, very much.
Yes, no place I'd rather be than French Ehrlich. Okay, that's old Larry Bird quote. All right, Jordan, take it away.
John Fetterman has been facing heat over the past few weeks, in part for his support for Israel, but now because of his stance on immigration policies. Now, this is somebody who ran his campaign as a progressive, but he and his staff are trying to distance himself from that label. He told NBC News, "I'm not a progressive. I just think I'm a Democrat that is very committed to choice and other things. But with Israel, I'm going to be on the right side of that, and immigration is something near and dear to me. And I think we do have to effectively address it as well." He says he's in favor of policies that restrict the flow of migration, breaking with progressives who oppose new limits on asylum. And this comes at a time where Trump-era immigration policies are being proposed by Republicans as coupled with military funding for Israel, Ukraine, and Taiwan. Telling NBC News, the senator added that while it's not ideal to have this conversation about asylum and parole policy in connection with an aid package for Israel and Ukraine, it's still one that we should have, given that Republicans have made it an essential condition to advance the supplemental bill. Progressives better do that because we can't leave Israel, we can't sell them out, and we can't sell Ukraine out, and we have to deliver on this. I just would like very much to get a deal to deliver this critical aid. Now, his staunch support for Israel in particular has angered a lot of people at him, but Fetterman Chief of Staff Adam Gentleson said the senator has always had the policy positions he's espousing today. Even though Republicans wanted to paint him as a socialist in 2022, and some folks on the left are pretending, he has since changed his beliefs. He's just being consistent. He spent the entire campaign telling people he wasn't a down-the-line lefty. It's true he campaigned as an outsider, but let's actually take a look at how he described himself. Here from 2020. "My dude, I'm a progressive Democrat."
Oops.
You know, that could mean anything. Here's another one. "We have started a progressive movement here in Pennsylvania."
Oh.
A lot of room for interpretation there. And finally, hashtag TBT 2009. Progressive rhetoric is great, but progressive results are 100 emoji.
Well, no, to be fair, he just took out the 1. Now there is 0 because now he's in Washington. So, like, I don't get it. You know, why are you guys confused? Once you get to Washington, you get comfortable. And then once you're comfortable, you put on a nice hoodie and you pretend to be a populist. And then you say, oh, yeah, progressive. Who said progressive? I never heard of the thing. I don't know what you're talking about. Look, this one's actually complicated. So if you ask me, number one, you're allowed to have different opinions on different issues. So if you think, hey, you know what? I think that immigration is a real issue and I've got different solutions for it. And some might be leaning progressive, some might be considered conservative, moderate. Okay, no problem. We say on this show all the time, open minds, open hearts, like let's talk things through, and if you got a different proposal, no problem. Saying he's on the right side of the issue on Israel, well, we agree to disagree, okay? But Adam Gentleson, his chief of staff, is right. He has been consistent on that in the campaign. There's this big moment where we all waited to see what he was gonna say on Israel because AIPAC and Democratic Majority for Israel were attacking other progressive Democrats. And he came out with a statement saying, Israel can do no wrong. And then AIPAC, et cetera, did not spend the money. He won the primary, he won the general election. I thought, well, maybe he's just being pragmatic and it's okay as long as he's balanced. He doesn't have to be like, oh my God, only pro-Palestinian side or anything like that, but be balanced when he's in office. But he has not been balanced. He's been 200% on the side of Israel, even as we have now seen endless war crimes, right? So, but to me, all of these things, you could say, hey, look, we got friends and allies who are on different sides of the Israel issue, et cetera. But the most telling to me was something that no one else is talking about. So now Fetterman has taken on the role of bashing any Biden opponent within the Democratic Party. So when Dean Phillips, a congressman from Minnesota, started running against Biden, It's Fetterman that's being quoted in all the articles saying, how dare he oppose our leader? Oh, no. Okay, so that's him saying, I got super comfortable in Washington. Whatever leadership wants, I'm not a progressive anymore. I'm not anything I pretended to be on the campaign trail. The only thing I have left from those days is the hoodie. But I'm here to serve the establishment. Okay, well, message delivered, message heard and received. We got you, brother. So join the long list of sellouts who are just sitting there to get fame and status and privilege. And he probably thinks this is a sophisticated way of running in 2028. All they care about is 20. Guys, we might not have a 2028. Anyways, so I'm done with Fetterman, not in that, hey, I never won his vote. I think he's the worst. No, but like in having hope in my heart that someone could actually be, and this is the most important part. It's not about being progressive or even populist, that someone in Washington could be authentic. I was hoping that he was the one guy who was authentic, and now those hopes have been dashed. Brett, what do you think?
So I like Fetterman as a senator, and because so infrequently as a senator do you learn new stuff about someone. Because they usually have been in there for 50, 60 years and there's nothing new. With Fetterman, I'm learning new things about him as a member of the greatest deliberative body ever, birthed forth on this planet. I think, listen, when people say progressive, one of the biggest challenges is to define the word. For me, progressivism means ground rules. It means making rules so that people who have less power are not taken advantage of by people with more power who can get a hold of that power, writing the rules effectively. In a state like Pennsylvania, usually that means you get people who have their jobs secure against any kind of outsourcing, any kind of, you want to have like a unionized workforce when it comes to manufacturing and steel production, like traditionally in Pennsylvania. And that's something that I think it's useful to see what a person from there says and how they position themselves. And I think also one of the reasons that when you look at Fetterman, he is very useful. He is potentially very useful to the Biden administration because he is a guy who just won in Pennsylvania. So did Biden, but you're gonna need someone there on the ground to fight for you. And Fetterman, when I do say I like him, it's also part of not being a super known quantity on the national stage is that people really do judge you by appearance and affect. And Fetterman was, a lot of people gravitated toward him because he had the appearance and the affect of someone who's just like, I don't give a crap. I'm gonna fight for normal people. And the question is he delivering that or not? And when it comes to, he's just defining, I guess, normal people as normal people by his definition within the borders of the United States when it comes to immigration.
I also think we should distinguish what he is supporting here on immigration policy, because like we were talking about before the show, these are things that liberals came out in droves to oppose during the Trump administration. That's the deal. They want funding for Israel, Ukraine, and Taiwan, and in exchange, Republicans want a reinstitution of Trump-era immigration policies. He's not saying, oh, this is a tough deal. He's saying, yeah, I'm on board. That's two totally different things. So it's not just that he's not a progressive. He's not even taking the liberal stance on this. If you remember in 2018, there was a nationwide day of protest in opposition to Trump's immigration policies. That was a rallying cry in the midterms and in 2020. In part, beyond Trump's chaos, people were deeply outraged over his immigration policies. Reinstituting that is an abandonment of things that Biden ran on in 2020 that people expected him to be better on. You can distinguish those two as a senator, but he's not doing that. He's saying, oh yeah, I think this is an important conversation we should have. We should do this. That's so much different than saying, I'm not a progressive.
Yeah, so look, you could put all those things together. So first he says, I'm a progressive 100 progressive, right? Now he says, I'm not at all a progressive. Okay, and now that's where Adam Jensen is wrong. That's clearly a change, a massive change, at least in terms of how he labels himself. Then number two, he doesn't just leave it at that. He then becomes an establishment hatchet man, going around attacking anybody who might run against Democratic leaders, etc. That's volunteering. That's taking an extra step, saying, who would you like me to attack on behalf of the establishment? I mean, that's an extra mile against progressives or anyone else. And then then okay, all right, well then what do you stand for? If you could come back and say, look, of course I don't agree with the Republicans on immigration, but this is my immigration stance. It might not match the progressive one or the liberal one or whatever it is, but it's mine and here's why I defend it. I can say, okay, I'm open to it. I'm willing to hear that out. I think it's a tough and complicated issue, but he's not saying that. He's saying now we're going past the establishment Democrats to kind of agreeing with the Republicans on not just immigration being a problem, but their policies on immigration. Now we're in weird, like 180, totally inauthentic land, right? So that's what I'm saying. It's not about what his policies are. If his policies were authentic, then I could say, okay, no problem. We could debate that. I could agree with something, disagree with others. I'm not gonna write you off. But like what we're worried about is now it's beginning to look like maybe he's a fraud. And so, okay, what do you stand for? He said, well, I'm not a progressive. I'm for choice and other things. Brother, that ain't it. So choice and other things is not a defining platform. That's basically saying, I don't really care what the issues are. I know choice polls really well, right? And other things, I don't want to define them in case I change my mind later, because it turns out I'm just a regular politician.
And that's total running for president. Like that is, you're just like, they put the feelers out. You see like Newsom is sending me these emails somehow that are like, I'm in Tennessee right now. I'm in Alabama right now. It is.
What are you doing there?
Nothing, not doing nothing. Yeah, so, but I think that whole thing of packaging them together is something that, if Gates has power within the Republican Party, and he did because he got rid of the speaker and replaced him with his other guy, and the other guy kind of, how much sway does Gates have? Gates was talking about like selectively packaging some things together, but then also splitting things off and getting them voted on individually. That calculus is basically saying, all right, choose. Fetterman, maybe he's brilliant. Maybe he's looking at that and being like, I don't think most Americans actually care about immigration. I think if you ask them secretly, most Americans will be like, well, if it's my job or someone from another country, it's my job first. And the thing that and then completely it's still a global issue. It still has to do with people outside who originate from outside these borders. When it comes to funding, that's the thing that's like in the news that people are still rallying around, according to Fetterman. If his calculation is based on Pennsylvania politics and national optics, yes. But if it is being the hatchet man for the Biden administration, we'll see how it plays out. I don't know what the answer to that is, but I do think that most Americans were mad about immigration when Trump was in office because they thought Trump was evil and they galvanized around that as one instance of it. And Trump was just too much. But when it comes to Biden, I think a lot of people are willing to kind of, with like they do with Black Lives Matter, just kind of like, I'm going to step away from that for now.
Yeah, well, let's see how supporting Biden and Trump policies turn out for him. When he was populist and kicking ass, he actually supported policies that were popular but that Washington didn't like. Now that he's switching to policies that Washington loves and the rest of the country hates, good luck with that. I know that sounds like brilliant political strategy in Washington, but out here in the districts, that sounds like you just sold out. Okay, we got to take a break. And when we come back, more news, like I said, including disastrous, but yet later fun news. All right, so stick around for both. Back on TRT. All right, guys, I'm going to read a couple comments I don't agree with. History Speaks says we need to develop a more realistic view of Israel. According to a 2014-15 Pew poll, nearly half of Israeli Jews wanted to ethnically cleanse Arabs. According to a 2012 poll, the majority of Israeli Jews believed African migrants were, quote, a cancer. Yeah, I understand that, but guys, don't do that. So first off, if you do polling of the American people, you'd be shocked at some of the very, very unfortunate opinions that 49% or 51% of Americans have. So don't go making assumptions about anybody based on one poll or another. I understand that hate is driven on both sides in that conflict, and it's gotten supernova toxic, right? So we've got more on that later in the show. But don't start talking about people's religions and ethnicities and backgrounds and making assumptions off that. The right-wing government of Israel has enough problems. You don't need to get into, what is their population thing? Once you start talking about populations, it's just a tiny little step into, well, then maybe if the civilians voted that way, we should do X. Don't do that. That's what bad guys do, okay? TJ Dartez writes in, just wondering, I'm a 22-year-old guy who recently started paying attention to politics straight after January 6th happened, and it's been very difficult to have hope. How does everyone at Young Turks keep hope, and how could I? So TJ, I hear you, and yes, everybody's struggling with that these days. But guys, there's only one option to win, which is to keep getting back up. So in a sense, we're doing rope-a-dope, okay? So yeah, we know the establishment is bigger than us, and they're mighty, and there's tons of things that go wrong all the time, right? But the minute you lose hope is the minute it's over, and we as subjugated people under corporate rule, and we're done, okay? Or maybe worse with Trump, could be fascism, right? We have to keep fighting back. The trick is to constantly get back up until the other side starts to lose hope and goes, they got up again? How are we gonna keep these guys down? And the answer is you're not. And remember this is really, really important. Our side, the progressive side, wins every single time in history. Change is the only constant. So sometimes it takes forever. The civil rights movement took 100 years. In some ways, the suffragette movements took 70 years, but once they started activism in the streets, it only took 7 years. But we win at the end. We got Black people rights, we got women rights, we got all these different groups in America and throughout the world more and more rights. We always win at the end. And so I know it's super frustrating, but don't lose hope, okay? If you do, that's when they win. Killjoy 100 asks, Cenk, have you asked Fetterman to be on? Also a little gratuitous self-promotion, my birthday's tomorrow, shout out. Yes, happy birthday. We've asked Fetterman on when he was even campaigning, and he said no, he didn't want to come on the Young Turks. That's usually a good sign that you're gonna sell out. Being honest, I can tell you a lot more about that with other candidates too. We'll be back. Back on TYT, Cenk, Jordan, and Brett with you guys. And Ed gifted 5 Young Turks memberships. Thank you, Ed, American hero. All right, Cenk's Nutty Buddy wrote in, everyone needs to listen to Jordan's podcast, The Insurgents. It's so good. I love Jordan and his chill voice, but fierce determination.
Thanks, I'm glad you read my comment, thank you. That's great.
Everybody check out the Insurgents podcast. And what I like about Jordan is, there's a lot of people that whisper, right? But then they also whisper in their policies. But Jordan, this comment is exactly right. Nice, chill voice, but a fierce determination. Love it. All right, what's next?
Very kind, thank you. The military has missed its recruiting target by around 41,000 recruits during fiscal year 2023. Now, over the past 3 years, they've seen active personnel drop by around 64,000 people. This makes the military now at it's the smallest point it has been in over 80 years. You could read into that, you could make assumptions about why that might be happening, but Eddie Gallagher, who you might remember as the retired Navy SEAL who faced trial for alleged war crimes and now runs the Pipe Hitter Foundation, has some thoughts about what might be behind the drop in recruiting. In a new op-ed in The Hill, he writes, "It really should come as no surprise that our current military is having trouble bringing in new recruits. The lingering impacts of politicized vaccine mandates, as well as story after story about troops being brainwashed with divisive ideologies, like woke gender theory and critical race theory are damaging morale and discouraging potential volunteers. President Biden's Pentagon brass seem more interested now about making sure that our military personnel are socially indoctrinated than that they are lethal. Now, the DoD surveys potential recruits on a biannual basis to get a better understanding about why people may or may not enlist in the military. And would it surprise you if I told you that critical race theory and woke gender ideology do not make that list? Here is what the DoD found in their most recent survey. So you could see the #1 reason why people would not enlist is the possibility of physical injury or death, and that's at 70% of respondents. The possibility of PTSD or other emotional or psychological issues is 65%, leaving their family of friends, other career interests, dislike of military lifestyle. The list goes on, but it's exactly what you might imagine. Now, Cenk and Brett, why do you think we're seeing a decline in military recruitment? And why is it critical race theory?
I was gonna go with the gay nutcracker that I heard about on Fox News.
Horrifying.
Yeah, I mean, they're soldiers, right? The nutcrackers, yeah, I've seen it, right? And then you got the black disabled, I don't know if that's got to do with this story or, but I do know that when somebody's considering going in the military, they're like, well, I could get my legs blown off, but I'm not concerned about that. But did someone say the military's open to gay people also serving? Oh, forget about it. Okay, come on. And it's an insult to all these people who join the military, who are in the groups that apparently these right-wingers don't like. And so they're willing to die for the rest of us, but oh no, I still don't want you. And if we excluded you, then we'd ironically have more people in the military? Okay, riddle me that. But the right wing never tries to make sense, and the numbers are obvious and clear, and Jordan just gave them to you, and it's obvious logic. If you asked me to go to war, I wouldn't be worried about if the military is woke or not woke. I'd be worried about getting my ass blown out, right? That is a weird way of saying it. Back to woke politics. So seriously, guys, come on. And right wingers, I'm asking you to use whatever brain power you got. Sorry for being a jerk about it, but you really think that the guys that are thinking of signing up for the military and going to war are worried about they're woke or not woke? Come on, man. Just use some common sense.
Well, we don't have a clear adversary, I would say, to rally around. And that goes hand in glove with the thing that used to be the best recruiter of all recruiters, besides mandatory conscription, which is big movies where we blow stuff up, and they're still getting made. And Maverick was a huge blockbuster, and that appeals to people. Another thing you do that's really, really great is you don't provide free college to people, but if they do go into military service, you do provide free college so they can, quote, be all they could be. For that, you don't tell them what they gotta do, where it's basically like you thought student debt was difficult. Otherwise, wait till we deploy you your 5th time against a non-clear adversary. But yeah, and when this guy, Eddie Gallagher, I love that it's Eddie Gallagher. And Jordan, you're so right. The pipe hitters.
It's amazing.
It's like pipe fitter? Are you trying to say pipe fitter? I hope so, because otherwise you're trying to say maybe pipe Hitler, but no, pipe hitter, it's smoking weed, and I'm supposed to take you seriously at this point? I take you more seriously in discussion about medical marijuana. But the reason you're seeing story after story, Eddie, is because people like you keep running story after story after like a single commercial where it's like, this woman has 2 moms and she's in the military. Meanwhile, I turn on college football, it's the Army-Navy game, and every 5 minutes there's another ad where they go from the President of the United States going meh, to an ad where I can either join the Army, the Navy, or the SEALs, but no matter where I go, I get a really awesome like camo thing, or if I see a computer, I'll be like, I won't even see the field at all. I'll be in a computer room playing Battleship remotely. It'll be great. We do plenty of recruiting.
Yeah, look, I can't complain about pipe hitter after I mangled that last thing about how to say things. Anyways, look, guys, the other thing is Brett hit on a really good point, which is if I thought we were going to get attacked here, and our lives and my family's life's on the line, our community, et cetera, is on the line, I'd be the first to sign up. But if you say, hey, go to Iraq and invade a random country and maybe die so that Halliburton can make more money, no interest at all. So it makes a difference that we haven't been defending the homeland in decades. All we've been doing is going and attacking other countries, oftentimes for no reason at all other than some corporation is gonna make money. Dying for some random multinational corporation is not on my bingo card.
A couple other things I do want to point out. So I hear you and I agree with you. There's not a national rallying moment. But also I think the way people have consumed war over the past several years has awakened them to the realities of conflict. To go back to your propaganda point, Brett, it has been heavily sanitized for decades. People would consume war maybe through an occasional nightly news segment, but then mostly through movies and television. Social media, smartphones, that totally changed the landscape for how people see and understand war and relate to it. I think that's a factor. But I also think there's a point that we need to mention. He's talking about vaccine mandates. Do you know how many vaccines you have to get to enlist in the military? Do you think that is what's putting people off of joining? You have to get 17 vaccines to enlist in the military. That is not a factor. He's doing this to make a career in right-wing media because his brand had been tarnished because of allegedly doing these things that he didn't ever really get punished for. But he is a pariah in some aspects of military media, military commentary, and he figures, hey, if I can just push the culture war narrative, maybe I'll find opportunities that way. It's such an easy grift for anybody to exploit.
And Jamie Raskin had another point, and if you want to see the full video, go to TYT Investigates, youtube.com/TYT Investigates reports, or just look for TYT Investigates on YouTube. Producer Josh has been doing an amazing job over there. But Raskin says, listen, it's not because of woke politics, it's because people in the military, despite all the stuff that they say they give you for college, they can't afford to survive. They need some other job, they're not getting paid enough. So we're not even paying the soldiers enough, and that in the giant swollen military budget that we have, we can't put food on the table of the soldiers who ostensibly are fighting for our right to put food on everybody else's table by keeping America safe and involved in commerce.
Yeah, we're encroaching a $1 trillion military budget.
Which is awesome.
We're not,
which I love.
We can do it, guys. We pulled out of 2 wars. We are not engaged directly in anything. Recruitment personnel is at its lowest point in over 80 years, and the budget continues to go up. How does this make sense? No, we're just enriching defense contractors and their shareholders.
Yeah, it got to a point where now the Navy's building new ships, but as he even points out, Gallagher does in his article, they might not have any guys to put on the ships. So we're building all this useless stuff because the defense contractors get paid off of it, and they get rich and they share a tiny percentage with the corrupt politicians. That's why it grows to $1 trillion. But they forgot to pay the service members because they're not donors, they're not political donors. So now they don't have enough guys to man all the junk that they built. But I'm gonna give the last word to one of our members because we do this show with the members. TYT.com/join to become a member, or hit the join button below on YouTube. Funkin' for Fun wrote, what? They don't know that there's gay people in the Navy?
In the Navy.
Okay, if that's news to you and you just found that out, man, this world is gonna be full of surprises for you. Okay, another break?
Yep.
All right, one more break. When we come back, more news. All right, back on TYT, let's go to members. Trump's Lady Lump says, let the smashing of Cenk's desk commence. Now I'm trying to do that less now. Let's see if I can live up to that. Probably not, but Cenk's left Trump. No. Jenks left tricep of fury says, another Democrat who ran on progressive policies to get elected, then went back on their word once elected. I really thought Fetterman was different. I feel betrayed and sick. Wang Jun writes in, Fetterman should get an award for disappointing his base in record time. Look, back in the day, that's why I ran for Congress. I thought maybe one person should do it. Should actually do the things that they say. Anyways, let's go to a critical comment that I wanted to address in YouTube memberships about me. Little Red Hen said, Cenk, brother, you have to stop ranting over your female co-hosts. It's demeaning, and as a trauma survivor, I was upset to tears over how Anna was treated. So let me say a couple things about that. Number one, I love that you care about her and that I understand and feel for you that you had that emotion yourself, let alone how you felt about protecting Anna. And I apologized to her on there a couple of times, and I think you guys are right in that I should not. I got emotional there and carried away in that story having nothing to do with Anna. But that's the part I wanted to address. Guys, I don't rant and rave over my female co-hosts. Number one, I rant and rave over everyone. Okay, I have a 21-year history of that. That is very obvious. Number two, you do not, I believe that it is totally patronizing to treat female co-hosts any different than male co-hosts. And I don't know anybody stronger than Anna Kasparian. So if you think that I have to be gentle with her, no. After I pissed her off, I was a little scared. Okay, let's be honest. Okay, so nobody moves the furniture better than Anna does. So I have enormous respect for her. And so that was my bad that I got carried away and didn't let her finish that story. No question about it. This is my third time now saying it. So you're right to look out for her. You're right to point out that it was wrong, but it has nothing to do with male, female. So, but you could choose to believe that or not believe that. But I'm telling you what's real about me. Okay. So now let's keep going. Purple Pegasus 2531 says, "Yay, Jordan and Brett on a Friday." Cenk, thank you so much for going on Roland Martin and the Breakfast Club. You have no idea how many people you're reaching by going on these platforms. No, I do actually. First of all, thank you for saying that. You're wonderful. But yeah, people ignore black radio. They view it as like, oh, it's a niche. Let's send Kamala Harris to go talk to black folks. No, you go talk to everybody. But anyways, thank you for noticing that. And yes, we've got to reach everyone, and obviously our black brothers and sisters who are the best and most ardent Democratic voters. Bo says, Cenk, I agree with your remarks yesterday. No matter how much we care, we all need a break from heavy negative news. Please take care of yourself, the staff and the viewers, by lightening it up sometimes. We are. We're going to do that more and more as we go forward. We like to have good stories, positive stories, and have a laugh once or twice. Also at my expense. We'll be back. Back on TYT, Cenk, Brett, and Jordan with you guys. And I'm Vanessa M95. Thank you for joining us. We appreciate it. They hit the join button below. You can do likewise to become part of the Young Turks. We need you guys. These are tough times for the industry. We're just about the only show that's survived that's part of a network. So there's some individual shows that have survived, but almost all the networks are gone. So if you can, this is a great time to subscribe, join. TYT.com/join. And then I want to thank heroes like this. Beach Babe 210 gifted 50 Young Turks memberships just now. So thank you from the bottom of our hearts. You make all this possible. All right, Jordan.
That's amazing.
Yep.
In recent days, a series of videos that show Israeli soldiers assaulting Palestinians and journalists, destroying gift shops, burning food, and in some, using a phrase that some might interpret as calling for genocide have emerged. These are deeply troubling, and we'll show you some, but do beware that some of this footage is graphic. Let's take a look. Now, media reports that the man is named Mustafa al-Haruf. He's a veteran photojournalist currently working for the Turkish state-run Anadolu agency, and you can see Israeli police assaulting him. He was later taken to the hospital for cuts and injuries to his face. The incident was covered by Nir Hassan of Haaretz, who explained, "We started walking, and then a police officer told us not to pass there. We tried to explain that another officer asked us to go through there, but he just started kicking us. Al-Haruf was handcuffed and threatened to be placed under arrest. Only after one of the officers noticed his physical condition was he released. Al-Haruf was transferred to the Al-Maqased Hospital, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, in East Jerusalem, where he was treated for deep cuts to his head and face." Now, the officers were suspended after this video was released, but there are other videos that show Israeli troops vandalizing stores and burning food. Let's take a look at those. Now, this is a video of a Israeli troop vandalizing a store in Jabalia, which is a city in northern Gaza. Here you see troops setting fire to food and aid, and this is in Shajaya, which is a neighborhood in Gaza. One soldier says in this video, "We turn on the light against this dark place and burn it until there is no trace of this whole place." And this video, I think many people have seen this week. There were different soldiers disrespecting, I think is probably the best word, a mosque in Jenin, which is in the occupied West Bank. The IDF hasn't disputed the authenticity of these videos. In fact, the soldiers in the last video have already been removed from operational activity. CNN also notes that many of the videos like these were posted, quote, apparently by the soldiers themselves. We've seen a lot of footage from the attacks on Gaza, the bombing. We see like the death toll rising, but I think this is an interesting look, and it's certainly not unique to Israeli soldiers, like the callousness. But I do think it helps people better understand just the type of behavior that war brings out in people, no matter who participates. I'm curious what both of you think of these videos.
Yeah, I was actually gonna say the same thing. Like, you see soldiers doing terrible things in all wars, and that's because it's a war. And don't get me wrong, I'm not justifying it. I'm gonna say very harsh things in a minute, so don't worry. But that's why you shouldn't have war. You should work towards peace. You know what Israeli soldiers did to Egyptians recently? And what the Egyptian soldiers did to Israelis? Nothing, because they did a peace deal in Camp David. And so they haven't fought at all, they haven't killed each other, they haven't done war crimes, they haven't humiliated one another. You know why? Because they have peace. And Egypt was the #1 enemy of Israel. And at the time, everybody said, oh no, you can't ever do a peace deal with the Egyptians. All they want to do is kill all the Jews, kill all Israel, drive Israel into the sea. And they started a war against Israel. They literally tried to drive the Jews, the Israelis, etc., into the sea, and they did a peace deal, and it totally worked. And it turns out that once you have a peace deal, they didn't want to do that anymore. So we have to end the occupation. We have to do a two-state solution. Going in there and humiliating the people inside of Palestine, let alone killing 18, 19,000 of them now, is never going to get to Israel to its ultimate goal. What was the point of Israel? A safe haven for Jews across the world who were oppressed. Well, as long as you keep doing this, the Palestinians are going to fight you to the end of time. Wouldn't you? I know I would. And so when are you ever going to get the peace unless you actually try peace?
People have tried, yeah. I mean, it's one thing, there's a lot has been said, most things have been said. One thing that doesn't get said enough is like you just have to be in the military if you're an Israeli citizen. Like you have to. So there's a lot of people talking about Israeli soldiers like they signed up for this on purpose. I think there's a lot of indelicate language when it like lumps all IDF soldiers together. Like as I said on Damage Report, I know a carpenter in Sherman Oaks who was in the IDF, had to go back, and he was like, I couldn't get out of there fast enough. But he had to do it. He had to do it. And that's, I mean, we've grappled with that in the past in the world, in American history. It is tough and it does horrible things to you. It does not excuse doing these, the things that we've seen. And I think it is incumbent on the military apparatus to make sure that they keep the people who are part of their military from doing this stuff. And the same way we talked about Eddie Gallagher earlier, initiate whatever you need to do to make sure that these kinds of horrible things don't happen. And it's tough. I mean, we can get into all these conversations, and they have been had, and they're super healthy, and they feel super unhealthy, and they go in circles because of course they do. Because everybody who's lived in this region of the world for 4,000 years, someone has tried to kill them because of who they are. Everybody. Currently, people have it way worse than others. But the memory of what happens, like you said, with invasions of Israel, counter invasions, the whole everything, the whole history, people remember, and there's this language, this unspoken and quite spoken language that I'm going to be so horrible to you that you are too afraid to do anything back for the rest of time. It gets in there, and it's horrible. And I wholeheartedly encourage the kind of initiatives that have happened for basically equally as long, and have succeeded in some senses with Egypt, and have failed in other senses, both by actions of people within either side. Historically, there have been radical Israelis who killed peace-seeking Israeli leadership. There have been, Hamas, and I just hope that when people are having these discussions, they really understand that. And I understand the instinct not to. I understand the instinct by a lot of people to watch this video and be like, but. And for people to look at other things and say, but. It's tough. It's the hardest thing to do, is to live there, first of all. It's much easier not to live there. And then a really hard thing to do is to really understand the totality of what's happening and understand the implications of your opinion when you say what your positions are. Because like I said I was for a ceasefire a while ago. And by doing that, I said, I know to families of Israelis whose sons, daughters have been murdered or are still alive there. I'm basically saying to them, I don't care as much about you. That's what you're doing, that's what you're saying. It's a difficult decision, it's a difficult position to take. Some people are taking it, but I hope everybody's taking it knowingly.
Yeah, so but I want to disagree with one thing you're saying, Brett, because being for a ceasefire doesn't mean that you don't care about the hostages. There's many other ways to get the hostages out. So there's, I hope, more productive ways. And yeah, it involves, nothing is easy, right? You're not gonna just get them for free, right? And you might have to exchange more soldiers and you might hate that, etc. But there's a better way to get them out. And I don't know if you guys heard the story today, but 3 Israeli hostages escaped. And then the IDF shot and killed them. And then when they asked them, why'd you shoot and kill your own hostages? They said, we didn't know they were in civilian clothes. And they said, well, we've been taught that the civilians are a threat. So if you're not even checking to see if they're Israeli or Palestinian or whoever they might be, you've been taught the wrong thing. And unfortunately, that's very telling. But we got a much worse video that we want to go to.
Yeah, this is the one I think some people might find the most offensive out of all of these. Let's take a look. Once again, the IDF did not deny the authenticity of this video. And if you are unfamiliar with the soldier's reference to the seed of Amalek, we have some context around that. The chance reference to Amalek, a biblical tribal nation inhabiting the Negev and the archetypical enemy of the Jewish people, originates from the end of chapter 25 of Deuteronomy in the Hebrew Bible. In the land which the Lord your God gives to you as an inheritance to possess, you shall obliterate the remembrance of Amalek from beneath the heavens. A similar command is given in 1 Samuel 15, where the prophet Samuel tells Saul, the first king of Israel, that God has ordered them to go and prescribe the sinful Amalekites, make war on them until you have exterminated them. Now, there are a couple other interpretations of that depending on what you're using. That's also in the Old Testament of the Christian Bible, and that is an explicit call for genocide in that translation. That reference has also been invoked by Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. You must remember what Amalek has done to you, says our Holy Bible, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said in an October 28th press conference. And we do remember, and we are fighting. The paraphrase was also invoked in a popular Israeli song called Harbu Darbu. We've brought the entire army against you, and we swear there won't be forgiveness, sons of Amalek. Another lyric from that same song, every blank, last day will come. Bella Hadid, Dua Lipa, Mia Khalifa.
Yeah, okay, so I'm expecting congressional hearings immediately, right? Because I hear that any chance of potential genocide is something that is just the worst thing that could possibly happen, and everyone involved should be fired. But those aren't theoretical chants, and those aren't on a college campus. Those are soldiers who are going to actually execute that chant for extermination. That actually goes a little bit further than genocide. Genocide is targeting one ethnicity in particular and killing a lot of them. Srebrenica, where 6,000 Muslims were killed, was considered a genocide, okay? Wiping that race off the map is a Holocaust. So the songs, I'm not interested in it's pop culture. No, that's not calling for genocide or worse. In pop culture is not an excuse, it makes it way worse. So those soldiers are not going to be punished. I read the details. They said, we're going to pull them off after the war is over. In other words, you're not pulling them out. There's going to be no consequences at all. Of course, there's no consequences. The leader of the country referred to Amalek. That monster is talking about genocide. And we're going to send $14 billion to commit genocide in Gaza? We should send $0. So look, guys, when you're in a war, these awful things happen. That's why we said in the beginning, go for peace instead of endless war. But it doesn't mean you don't criticize when it does happen. So you see that an awful incident of that, and they're executing it. 19,000 civilians dead now, 19,000 overall dead, and 29,000 bombs dropped in an area the size of Las Vegas. Imagine you're in Las Vegas and they're gonna tell you, hey, we're gonna drop 29 bombs. Good luck. We don't know which, and they're 2,000-pound bombs, the largest bombs there are. America wouldn't drop more than 500-pound bombs in the worst fighting in Iraq. They're 4 times that size. We're gonna drop 29 of them. How scared would you be if you and your family were there? Now imagine 29,000 of them dropped. And then they sing about how they're gonna exterminate you. Israel has got to be infinitely better than this. And this is not how an ally or a democracy acts.
Yeah, I don't know the way in which Amalek is used, like colloquially, if it's like you're Satan or the devil, but if it is the case that you're saying you want to wipe an entire population of people off the planet, that is not something we should incentivize. It's not something we should celebrate. It's something that we should censure. You just shouldn't be doing those kinds of things. I think, yeah, I mean, I said it earlier. Like when you see these things, when you see this kind of behavior, it's bad behavior. You don't want to incentivize it. You don't want to reward it. You want to censure it. And like you said, like this is war. These are horrible things that are happening. You're going to, I mean, a lot of people, at the end of it, just remember that everybody involved in this is a human being. It's, I mean, yeah, you get conscripted into the military and you also are born wherever you're born. And if you're born in Gaza, you have a way worse life than most people on the planet. And that sucks. And I just want to make sure we're all using like I say this all the time. I feel like I'm a referee in a sport I absolutely hate. But if you find you're 10 minutes from being Kanye West, go back and yeah, that's I just like try to see what tropes you're having creep in there. If this turns into like anything all Jews, then don't do that. I think everybody can still have like an opinion of seeing something like that, of singing a song. We remember put a boot in your ass, it's the American way, like all that stuff. So
yeah. So I just want to say one thing about that, guys. We got to get back to humanity, okay? And so when I think it was 36 kids killed in Israel, and you look at that, and it's heartbreaking. And now we've had thousands of kids killed in in Gaza, and I keep remembering that 3-year-old that we showed you yesterday with this giant scar across his head, and they have to try to explain to him that his parents are dead in Gaza. Be a human being in either direction. You have to call out both of those things. That's reprehensible. Both of those things are reprehensible. And then if you slipped into, hey, they're the bad guys and we should kill them, you've already gone in the wrong direction. You're missing the point. We shouldn't kill anyone. We should all remind ourselves that those 3-year-old kids could be our kids. Get back to humanity and decency. All right, we're gonna do a bonus episode, guys, for the members. And yes, Kanye West is going to be in it, unfortunately, and some lighter stories as well. tyt.com/join or hit the join button below. We'll see you there in a minute. I'd be worried about getting my ass blown out, right? That is a weird way of saying it.
Gay nutcracker.
Smash it.
back on the bonus episode. Cenk Uygur, Jordan Mule, Brett Ehrlich. Brett's also director of programming and the host of Happy Half Hour. Check that out. You guys are all members. You can check it out anytime you like. And Jordan does the Insurgents podcast. Okay, Brett's got the next story.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, more like Kanye worst, am I right? Take a look.
No, none of y'all mother here with no Instagram, nobody living, nobody at, and I don't want to hear from none of these Jewish talk about, oh, he's in an episode. These bro, these niggas, you know what I'm saying? I'm on my Farrakhan Don right now, bro.
Kanye West is back, baby, doing some high-level satire that we mortals can never hope to understand. Or it is possible he is in the grips of another episode, hate to be the one to say it, and he is turning into anti-Semitic Kanye once again, rare form. You kind of forget that he's there, and then he just ends up giving some kind of diatribe like this at a listening party, album listening party in Las Vegas. During the event, West revealed he'd added another anti-Semitic line into his new music. Quote, I still keep some Jews with me. Management? Nah, I only let them do my jewelry. God, he's such a visionary. Anyway, so he went on a rant about Jews, quote, controlling schools and hospitals, and once again praised Adolf Hitler. A little on the nose if you ask me. Take a look.
The mother pilgrims, it's the Jewish, they dress the same. It's the same. That's the story. They put us in the school, the Rothschilds. We don't have to bow to this. Okay, it's 60 million of us in America, 60 million Jews in the world. 50% of our deaths is abortion. 25% of us go to prison. Raise one hand if you don't know one prison, one locked up, and one poor. Raise your hand if you don't know one person got abortion. Now I tell you, if it was in a Jewish mother on Friday with no, everybody raised their hands. So, but wait a second. But wait a second. Who make the hospitals though? Who got the hospitals? These are Zionists. This is what I'm trying to tell you. Jesus Christ, Hitler, yay. Third party, sponsor that.
Who would sponsor that? Oh, Jesus Christ, Hitler, yeah. You just see Jesus in the corner going, no, I'm not with him. I mean, my body, my blood is like 14% alcohol according to the priest on Sunday when you gotta drink it, but I'm not that drunk. There's an amazing image. He also wore a black KKK hood during a listening party in Miami earlier this week. He's getting around. And while wearing that KKK style hood on stage, he rapped, quote, God, I'll never do it justice. How I'm anti-Semitic, just effed a Jewish B. Which really is a get out of jail free card when it comes to anti-Semitism. Take it from me, half a Jew. So it's just one of those decision points, guys. I gotta be honest. For me, it's a decision point. Do I do this jokingly? Obviously, I've made that decision. I would like to say in the grips of what's happening on the international stage, I just ask that everybody ask themselves one question in all of this. Kanye said a lot of stuff. Those are classic anti-Semitic tropes. Are you saying things kind of like Kanye West at this point? How many, you've heard of 30 seconds to Mars. Are you 30 seconds to Kanye? If so, go back. Realize how ridiculous you sound. And please, I just wonder, what would possess some, there's people it might be just a cadence call and response, like instinctive thing when he says like, who runs the hospitals? Which is just a nonsense rhetorical question. And someone goes, like the guy on the Daily who has those little thought gasms. They're like, that's really interesting. No, it's nonsense.
Yeah.
What do you think, people?
So look, I'm torn on it too, on two fronts. One is it's so absurd, it's hard not to laugh at the absurdity, right? And on the other hand, it's so serious, the crazy stuff he's saying, the hatred that he's driving. And on the one hand, he's so vile that I want to, rhetorically rip his head off. And on the other hand, he's obviously mentally ill, right? So it's so hard to know how to treat this guy. But okay, let's talk about why it's absurd. Who controls the hospital? Why is that a bad thing? If the Jews have brought us hospitals, I'd like to thank the Jews.
Already it's such a bad alley to go down. Don't talk. Don't go down there. Don't go down there. That's a trope. Trope.
Is that even a trope? I thought he made that up.
No,
why would that even be a bad thing? Look at all the doctors they brought to save our lives. Like, what is that? And I thought the Indians ran the hospitals.
Those are tropes. Tropes are like, are you a good Jew or are you a bad Jew? Or are you a person who's saying the good thing? Are you one of the Jews who's on our side when the Jews are on the other side? This is a whole thing happens with like African American things where it's like, don't make me speak for everybody. Don't like see if I'm a good one or a bad one. Like it's a trope with people who have historically been underserved and marginalized. No one wants to speak for everyone. It's just rough. But yeah, it's like it's just like he's spouting nonsense.
But is that like, serious question? I have never heard that. Is that a thing that the Jews control the hospitals?
I forget which show I was watching, but it's like when they're talking to a Jew, it's like a Gentile talking to a Jew, and it's like, and I just so you know, we always, when it comes to picking a doctor, we look for the Jewish name. That's a
that's a thing. Okay, yeah. Jesus Christ, man. People find different ways to be anti-Semitic. And the prison line, I didn't understand the prison line. There's a lot of African Americans in prison. There's a giant problem. We've talked about that endlessly in terms of how to fix it, criminal justice reform. What does that have to do with Jews? What are you talking about? What insanity is coming out of your mouth? And then he's like, yeah, the good guys are Jesus, Hitler, and yay. Already insanity in every part of that. But also, Jesus is Jewish.
Yep.
Like, but that leads to back to the other question that I asked. Like, what do you do with this guy? On the one hand, if you don't point out how vile and disgusting it is, then it just sits there. And I know that whenever anything sits there, it festers, right? So you got to knock it down. On the other hand, it's so obvious that he's mentally ill. And so where's the line between incredibly vile and mentally ill? And if you say, well, look, he's a genius artist, I don't care at all. Like that doesn't move me 1%. And I'm so sick of people saying that. I don't give a fuck how good he is in music or not good. I don't care. It's like saying, well, on the other hand, I thought Hitler was actually a pretty good artist. I don't care. That's not the relevant part. Okay, so earlier in Kanye's career, the relevant part was his music. Now the relevant part is he has lost his mind and he's trying to drive hatred towards a specific group. And it's disgusting. And if you don't realize that Kanye's disgusting, sorry, but there's something deeply wrong with you. This is not close, it's not around the edges. He's all the way at talking about how great Hitler is. Not close, okay? So you're not, if you're agreeing with any of it or trying to excuse it in any way, shape, or form, yeah, you're 30 seconds away from him, and you're 30 seconds away from going, yay, Hitler. That's an awful, awful place to be. Fuck Kanye and fuck his music. So I think I was clear enough. Go ahead.
Yeah, no ambiguity there. The conversation always around, oh, we got to separate the art from the artist. This is somebody who is past that point. They've made it perfectly clear who they are, what they think, what they believe. And as someone who really liked his first several albums, it's just like, there's no point. I can't get past what he's saying and what he's doing, even from a couple of years ago. I would encourage other people to do the same. Also, the people who are around him, the people who are on the next album or worked on his next album, which could come out soon, and the people in that room. There was a really interesting moment in that video where he kind of acknowledges that many of the people in that room are people he's paying. So what are you doing with your life? Where you have to sit there and like nod along, the yeah, totally. The Jews control the hospitals for a paycheck. Like there are other jobs out there, I promise you. They're probably more interesting than that, than catering to his ego. I would encourage you to just distance yourself, and especially all the rappers who are on this upcoming album, who have verses or help produce it. Don't work with them anymore, because you're gonna blow up your career.
Yeah, I was gonna say one last thing about that. Look, Hitler was probably also mentally ill, so that's why it's an even tougher issue. Like, what do you do with someone who's mentally ill but causing great harm, right? But Jordan makes a great point. The people around him have no excuse. Okay, maybe he's mentally ill. What's your excuse? Oh, I was gonna collect a paycheck for helping him promote the worst, most violent anti-Semitic propaganda. Well, I hope you're proud. So no, if you're in that room and you're not walking out, you're disgusting.
Yeah, I just want everybody to be on the lookout for like, are you invoking any anti-Semitic tropes in these times? There's only one thing that he said that was accurate in his video. We're not gonna go to the video, but he did talk trash about Sierra Canyon. And as a proud alumnus of Chatsworth Hills, they were our Rinaldi rivals, and they do suck, and Kanye's right about that. I don't care how many LeBron James kids go there, but they suck.